Let's do it one more time. Okay, here we go. Good. 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 Not bad. Okay. Now, that's a good job, fellas. Now, that's a little thing, and you could see that it wasn't all that easy to adapt to, but it's a little thing that makes a big difference. Okay, both those things. You know, 5 guys against the ball, communicating both on the passes in offense and calling the ball on defense. Now, you might think that it's more important to call ball on defense when you're playing zone. I don't agree. It's more important, it's most important to do that all the time. And one of the things that I tell my teams about communicating, and we didn't go over this, you know, how often do you say ball? When the guy caught the ball, the guy came out, he said, ball, ball. What we like to say, and this is something that Jeff Van Gundy started about, hey, Devin, hold that ball, okay? You communicate early, you communicate loudly, and you communicate continuously, okay? So how many times do you say ball when you got the ball? Continuously, okay? Continuously. And so what I want to point out about that, all right? When the ball moves from here to here, while it's in the air, on air time, as that ball's in the air, now is when you start communicating. Ball, 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 ball. You get into them, you make them feel you, you keep calling it. All right, so you're nail, 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 early, loudly, and continuously. Your help, 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 your rim, rim, rim. Keep talking that until the ball's no longer in that position. When the ball moves, it's the next guy's opportunity to communicate early, loudly, and continuously. And there are any number of things that you can communicate about on defense. You always have to communicate your coverages. You always have to communicate who has the ball. You always have to communicate if there is something you're trying to do. And something you're trying to do would be, let's put the ball back in the corner over here. Let's swing that ball back across here in the corner. I want to talk about this. All right? When he picked up, and the first time he did it, he took a strong, no baseline stance. You see how he is right there with his shoulders angled toward the top of the court right here, forcing the middle to his help, and that's good. All right? When he's calling ball, the other thing he can do to help his teammates is call the direction he's forcing it. Okay? In this case, he's forcing middle. Sometimes, as a coach, you want to always do that. You want to force middle from every position. The only place where that's not clear is at the top. All right? There's no way to force middle up here. All right? But one of the things that we do a lot in college and the NBA, and you guys can probably benefit from this, is we boss the ball. Does anybody know what bossing the ball is? It's forcing it one way or the other. Okay? So once you pick up the ball right here, we talk about this a lot. And this is a tough question because most guys, we'll go with most guys' strength. I don't know, is your strength to go right or to go left? Right. Okay, that's what I would have guessed. So what you might want to do is call ball, pick it up, but boss him to his left, okay? It's to your right. That's what's confusing. You got to figure that out as a coach. Do you want to talk about how you're going to force guys according to their tendency or according to where you are defensively? That's a question that's very difficult to answer. You got to come up with that on your own. An example is when you're calling screens, do you call screens on the player's right or left, or do you call screens on the defensive player's right or left, the offensive player's right or left? What I always like to do is I want to talk about sending the guy to his weak hand. So you're going to boss him to his left. So when you take the ball, if he's the best player, if he's the guy that we decided we're going to make work especially hard to get something, we're going to boss him left. So you're going to be up into him, boss him left. Now who does that put the next job on? You right there. You know now that you've got to be here and that everybody's got to be tilted this way a little bit more if we're bossing him left. Okay? So you call ball, boss left, boss left, boss left. Early, loudly, continuously. Okay? That was a good question. There were some other people who had their hands up. Can we go to the next question? Yeah. Okay, the question is, as a coach, you got to deal with a lot of different personalities to try to reach one common goal, and that's winning. And how do you go about dealing with that? Well, that's a big question. And it sort of reminds me of something that I think is important to talk about right now, and that's the things that you emphasize. You know, what are you going to emphasize in a given practice? That's always key. What are you going to emphasize over the course of a season? Okay? What are you going to make your team's identity? Okay? The best defensive teams that I've ever been a part of, we've emphasized defense over and over and over and over. The best rebounding teams I've been with, we've made rebounding one of our priorities. The best shooting teams I've been with, we've dedicated a lot of practice time to reps and shooting. A lot of gym time, we've made that a clear expectation of everyone. So my point is, the things that you most emphasize tend to end up being the things your team becomes good at. The more energy you put towards something specific, like either defense or rebounding or shooting, the more you're going to likely have success in those areas. So the same thing's true about team play. If everything you do with your team indicates that unselfishness is a priority, that indicates that teamwork and team play is a priority, and you're consistent about that, then you're gonna find a way to have success. Looking at these drills that we just did, individuals have to call ball and help and nail and things like that. But as a team player, you've got a responsibility to do those things to help your team be good. And the difficult thing is, a lot of times your best players, your best players or your most productive players are the ones who tend to exhibit selfish behavior. And what you got to do is continue always to emphasize the team things, the team need for little things like communication, the team need for the extra pass, and then hold everyone accountable and guard those things as tightly as you can. Because the moment you emphasize team play but allow individualism or selfishness to creep into your team, then everything that you stress, everything you say becomes less meaningful. And that's what you got to work on. Little tricks for that, it's tough. I mean, I've been on teams where we've done all kinds of things. Some of the ways that you can do that is to reward or keep track in practice and games of the things that don't get most recognized. And everybody knows you get recognized for points, you get recognized for rebounds, you get recognized for assists. You don't as much get recognized for the extra pass or the hockey assist. You don't as much get recognized for drawing a charge or diving on a loose ball or things like that. So as a coach, you've got to try to figure out ways to reward the most unselfish things that can happen. I'll give you an example. And you guys can have a seat. I don't mean to keep you standing out here, but one of the things I did this year for drawing charges, I wanted to make, my team this year was small. We were one of the smallest teams in Division I. We played a 6'1" power forward a lot of the time. And I told my guys before the season started that we didn't have any shot blockers, so what we had to do to be effective defensively is we had to do a great job drawing charges. If we didn't draw charges, we weren't going to be any good because we weren't going to block shots. So for us to protect our rim, we had to do it with our bodies. Well, we kept track of drawing charges. We worked on how to fall every day, teaching young guys how to sit down like this and then fall in a way they're not going to crack their head. I was working with a martial arts strength coach one time who started teaching our team at Stanford how to do that. And it's amazing the effect it has when guys start to be confident in how they can fall. Well, we worked on how to fall. We worked on selling flops, like flopping by, on contact. We worked on all these things. And then I also told them that everybody who drew a charge in a game, I gave them a pair of NBA socks that I had left over. So it was amazing. They'd be, kid would draw a charge, get up off the floor in the game, run over and says, "You better have my socks, coach." But it was almost like they began to think of that more than anything else. So it was an unselfish team thing that they were all shooting for because of a different thing I laid out for them. That's always your challenge as a coach, is what you can come up with like that your guys will connect with, that your guys will, get excited about. In the NBA, when we played in Summer League, obviously everybody had NBA socks, but the coach gave guys $5 for a charge. And you wouldn't think NBA players would worry anything about $5. They're getting $106 a day per diem. But that $5 for a drawn charge got their attention, and they wanted to do it. So there's all kinds of little things like that that you can try to come up with. Some of them are more effective than others. but I understand that challenge that you're talking about. I would say this: you never want to make a scene out of anybody being unselfish, because my sense in all the time that I've coached, no player ever thinks of himself as selfish, ever. Even though some of them real clearly are, and everybody on the team knows it, and that's the delicate balance that you got to work through. Because if you label someone selfish, they often withdraw, and you don't want your guys withdrawing. Celtics, Kevin Garnett, right here.
During my practices, I emphasize a lot of my practice drills are based on communication, so it requires communication within the practice drills that we do. So that kind of takes you over to the game.
Mm-hmm.
But with boys, it works well. But with girls, what I've noticed is, due to the shyness and not having an easy time expressing themselves at a young age,
right, that
area lacks, and also jumping with girls. How else can you implement that? Not only by explaining that communication is important and here are the results, but what else can you do besides practicing it that you can help kids become more verbal on the court?
Okay, yeah, the question is, especially dealing with young girls, how do you get girls to communicate when it's not their nature? And I think that's a tough question. My experience has mostly been with boys in basketball, but I didn't mention this before, I guess I should have. I coached women's basketball for a brief time when I moved to California. I left Wake Forest, followed my wife out to California, who's a doctor, and I took a job as a women's coach at University of San Francisco. And I was amazed in dealing with the young girls how intently they listened to everything. And they had this incredible desire to please, I felt like, especially relative to the boys that you coach. But you're right, there's a ton of differences. And getting young girls to communicate is difficult. I think the keys there is, get their input. And that's what I felt like with girls more than anything. They had to be involved with the things they were asked to do. They had to understand why they were being asked to do those things. It wasn't as easy, to get them to buy in if you were just tell them to do it. They would do it, but they wouldn't quite do it with as much purpose if they didn't understand why it was happening or why it was important. And, and then, as you said, everything that you can do in your drills to create communication is a great idea. But if you are working with your team to communicate and you can't get them to do the simple things you're asking them to do, and this is one of the things I think is a great lesson about coaching. If you can't get your team to do what it is you want them to do, it's probably more because of the way you're explaining it or the fact that the expectation doesn't seem realistic to them than it is because they just won't do it. Most teams will do things they believe in, that they see are important. If you can't get your team to do something like that, it might be time to move on from it. I don't know exactly the dynamics of the team that you're talking about, but I will say this: sometimes it's just the nature of your team. When I took the job at Irvine and I had my first meeting with all my guys, the first question I asked them, I said, "Who are my team leaders?" And I looked at them, I wanted to see what was going to happen, and no one raised their hand. No one raised their hand. And I couldn't believe that. I thought at least somebody, would recognize, probably ought to, even a meek would have been better than nothing. But we didn't have it. We didn't have leadership. And so real clearly one of the things I learned that I was going to need to establish was how to cultivate leadership within the group. The team that we had didn't have good leadership, and we also didn't have good communication skills. And as hard as I worked on improving those things, at the end of the year, we still didn't have those things. We still didn't have very good leadership. We still didn't have very good communication skills. And that's one of the challenges that I'm facing as I build my program, is how to get guys who aren't as comfortable doing some things that I think are really important, to get them to do those. And that's kind of the art of coaching.